Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, and welcome to Through a Scottish Prism midweek special. Can't use my usual line of a week since I last spoke to you. But since I did, I hope you and yours are fine. But there's so much going on this week, especially with the leadership contest going on, which is vital to us all. I think it's important that we get as many voices and hear as many voices as we can on this subject. And I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by a visitor to our show before and a good all-round egg, Robin McAlpine. My friend, how are you?
I'm very well. It's getting cold here. I'm looking out the window awaiting the snow. We're supposed to get minus 12 and 30 centimetres of snow up here. So I'll need to go and get all the long life milk in or something like that. But I know it's the sun's out today, so it's really cheery.
Well, that's a pretty. Well, I see when you come on, I don't know whether to announce you as an author or a political analyst, or I just don't know. So it's just Robin.
Well, I mean, it's just I'm still at Commonweal doing all the policy stuff I was always doing, and I comment on a whole bunch of stuff. And other than that, I'm just trying to find things to make trouble with in a good cause. So just the usual.
Indeed, you've been quite active and vociferous, dare I say, on this election of a new leader to replace Nicola. Now, whether people like it or not, it's the only show in town at the moment, Robin. And it's actually not a very good one at the moment, is it?
Well, right. So here's the point. You've got to try and make the world the place you want it to be, but you've got to deal with it as it is. And this is as it is. This is what we've got just now. One of three people is going to be the next First Minister of Scotland. And I know that it's a choice for SNP members, but this has ramifications way beyond just inside the SNP. And I've been trying to keep an appropriate distance from all of this because I am sensitive about interfering inside the business of political parties. But in this instance, we're at a crossroads in the future of Scottish independence, and just sitting around crossing your fingers, hope the SNP makes the right choice and not trying to engage with it, it doesn't seem to me to be the responsible thing to do. So yeah, I have had a few things to say about it. And what do I think of it so far? Well, actually, after last night, I mean, it's getting marginally better than it has any right to be, on the basis that I'm quite bamboozled by what people think you can prepare by way of a credible campaign in 2 weeks. I mean, it wasn't even 2 weeks; it was a week that people had to prepare to go out and go on television. Now, again, this is something I do for a living. I've sat in meetings with very senior politicians, getting briefed, getting materials prepared, testing lines, going back, finding policy experts to come in and give advice, putting together portfolios of policy ideas, putting strategy together, getting prepared, getting ready, and going out and doing a campaign. And that's how people do it. When political parties pick leaders, they don't do it in 2 weeks, or they don't normally. So what we've ended up with here is, I mean, frankly, one candidate who is ready, we'll come back on to what that means, and two candidates who were respectively just back in the back benches, having rebelled, and one is away on a maternity leave. And to say, right, snap your fingers, stand in front of a television camera in 5 days, the first time that people were appearing on camera, stand in front of a camera in 5 days and answer questions on absolutely everything. And if you don't sound totally prepared, we're going to gut you out for it. It's not a feasible way to go about things. So it has picked up. It really was dismal last week. I think last night was entertaining, was interesting. We're starting to see some genuine differences between the candidates. Yeah. Do we have a ready-made, boil-in-the-bag First Minister? I don't think we do. Do we have stuff there from which something could be put together? Well, first of all, we've no option. And second of all, yeah, I think it is possible. So I'm trying not to be crushingly, relentlessly negative about this and try to work out what would we do with what we're working with. But it isn't the most inspiring lineup, and it's not been a wonderful debate, and it has been hamstrung from the beginning.
Yeah, but the point is, it was on purpose or by being amateurish Why was it done that way? Normally, you got a nice long run until October, it should have been, because at normal SNP leaderships or any office is elected at the annual conference, which is invariably around about October. That would have been the normal practice, would it not?
Well, the Constitution as it was, most people had their folk memories of it being that it was basically a 4-month process. So, yeah, I mean, the problem with saying that it only happens at conferences, what happens if your leader gets knocked down by a car 2 days after conference? You can't wait a year, or you can't even wait 6 months to. So there is a procedure for doing this. It's just that nobody does it in 3 weeks. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm not being. This isn't one of those McAlpine opinions things. I challenge anyone: go and find a political party, a major political party anywhere in Europe, who, in the event of a full vacancy, expects to have the whole thing basically in and dusted in 3-4 weeks. You don't do it like that, because
there's a reason for
it's
that,
not taking
Robin.
yourself seriously.
But let's be honest, without being cynical or conspiracy theorist, this was done to give the continuity candidate the advantage. I mean, that much
100%.
is obvious in this campaign.
Yeah, that actually, I've written about that quite a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying not to be really unpleasant here or really nasty or too personalised about this, but I mean, somebody who's not far away from loyalist circles that I was speaking to said to me the second that Humza came out, they said, "Oh my God, if that's their candidate, they're in serious trouble." And I'll to give you a sense of that, for about the last 5 years, I knew that we were heading towards a shift. It would have happened 2 years ago if it hadn't been COVID, is my opinion. So I've known for about 5 years where we're heading towards a shift. We're certainly not going to achieve independence under the last leadership. So I started asking people, I mean, basically everybody I met with any visibility higher up in the party, who's next? Because I kept asking that. I didn't expect them to know. I was just trying to find out what in their heads was succession. What did it look like to them? And what's quite interesting is over those I did that for quite a few years. And over that period of time, nobody said Humza to me. And I found that quite surprising, because quite a lot of people in the party thought that Humza was, certainly presentationally, what a politician looks like, what a first minister looks like. His shirts are always immaculately ironed. So I said, well, what about Humza? And I still didn't get any pickup on it. So what I think is interesting is, I mean, even 2 years ago, even a year ago, people weren't really talking about Humza as a particularly credible leadership candidate. And there's 2 things that I think happened with that. And I've really only talked about one. So the first of which was, I'm afraid it's in the DNA of the SNP at the moment to slant every playing field. I mean, that's what they do. It's their default go-to. Controlling agendas, controlling when meetings are held, controlling who gets tickets for things. They do that, and with virtually everything that they do. And in this occasion, I think they were quite right to be worried about candidates gaining stature over the course of a longer campaign against a candidate who's, I mean, Humza's got he's got nowhere to climb to. I mean, anything Humza's going to have achieved as a candidate for elected office, for high office, he's done. He's not going to have a personality transplant now or find new skill sets that he didn't have last week. So Humza's, I mean, as close to a finished article as ever going to be. And those who were likely to challenge him were not in that position. So yes, absolutely, it was a cynical attempt to narrow the chance of others gaining stature, and in particular to push the party into what they thought was going to work for them, which was a name recognition competition. And the kind of anointed, he has Nicola's nod kind of idea. And it hasn't worked out for them. But there is a second reason why I think they were quite keen to rush this, which is they were absolutely desperate to stop anybody from Westminster coming up and having a go at this. That was the thing. I mean, I'm not talking about that much, and I've not mentioned so much.
And
but
particularly, possibly an Edinburgh MP.
Joanna Cherry is one that, but it's hardly lacking. There are attempts to prevent Joanna Cherry from being anywhere near the possibility of contesting the SNP. They're pretty transparent. They're not very subtle. So, I mean, I think we were pretty sure that they would have been horrified if it had given Joanna an opportunity to come up. But I mean, it's not just Joanna. I think that I'm still to judge his politics. I'm a bit concerned. He's a bit in the kind of oily right-wing side, but there's no question that Stephen Flynn's made an impact coming in as Westminster leader. He's certainly a strong combative performer at the dispatch box and in media. But he has been in the realms of what I would call Sturgeon loyalism. He has been absolutely disobedient, really disobedient. He was very much told, sit in the state and don't challenge Ian Blackford. And he just took Ian Blackford out anyway. And Sturgeon's people were not happy about that. So I don't think they wanted Stephen Flynn coming up either. So no, I think it was both to give their candidate the highest possible chance and to block the possibility of any less controllable, higher profile, more established people coming up from Westminster. And I think it is worth pointing out here. I was trying to do my maths on this. I think this is the bizarre thing that people haven't really talked about. I think I'm correct in saying that Ash has almost, if you take adult life to begin at 21, I think Ash must have almost twice as much adult life as the other two put together. I mean, it's quite remarkable. Humza's 32 and Kate's 33. I mean, again, I'm a bit old myself, but in normal political circles, that's I know, but in normal political circles, that's pretty kindergarten stuff in terms of political maturity to become a national leader. And if you look at comparators, Sanna in Finland is in her 30s and a national leader, but she kind of was regarded as being quite particularly precociously skilled, quite strong as a candidate, and it's very rare. I mean, you could virtually get 3 Humzas or three Kate Forbeses into the lifespan of your average candidate for US president these days. They're both pushing 80. So it's a particularly young field. It's a particularly inexperienced field. And again, I think that they thought that if we just keep nodding towards, if the machinery of the SNP nods towards Nicola's choice, inverted commas, the party would just do as it was told and go into it. So, it's been a shamelessly short campaign, and it's not cast the SNP in a good light. It's for me, SNP credibility has been sacrificed to the interests of a faction within the SNP.
Correct. I mean, what happened down in the south of Scotland with Emma Harper, and again later this week with in Clydesdale with Mary McAlpine. I mean, just wrong.
No, Mary's my MSP. I've known her since she was young. She lives in the same town as me. I know her parents for years.
Another child, actually.
Oh, I know, she's her dad's a local councillor. She's she came in, she went into work as a SPAD, came straight out of that, was given a seat, basically in challenge, has come through, went straight in the cabinet. Now, I think Mary's great. I like her a lot. She's a lovely person, and I'm sure she'll go and do interesting things. It's not even, this is the problem for me with the SNP. With the Emma Harper thing, with that, and I promise you there's lots more of it going on, a lot more of it going on. I'm conscious of I am a gossip, not a grass. When I gain information from people on a personal basis, I try never to go and blow it in the public domain, or people won't talk to you. So I'm going to take this carefully, but I am aware of a person whose contract has been suspended for 4 weeks to work full-time on the Humza campaign.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sitting there going instantly, but wait a minute. Somebody is paying that person, and that has to count against the election expenses. And therefore, I think you've managed to have one person plus some placards. I think you're out of money, because I don't think this is actually being done right. But what I'm trying to say here is, I'm not suggesting that the SNP is full of bad actors. It's not just wall to wall. There's bad actors, but it's not just wall to wall. These people are all crooked, or it's the culture of the party. I don't think it probably ever occurred to Mary McAlpine when she asked all the branch members, "Will you come and attend a meeting with Humza?" I don't think it occurred to her that the bit of the rules which said any event must invite all 3 candidates. I suspect it just never occurred to her that the rules actually meant that's what you had to do. It's the culture of the SNP.
I'm of the opinion, Robin, when this came to light, what actually happened, she suddenly changed it to, it's a conversation. That came from headquarters. What headquarters should have done was immediately said, no, you can't do this. Cancel it immediately. It's not fair. It's not right. It's against party rules. No, they didn't. They allowed it to go ahead. They gave it a nod and a wink.
Yeah, of course. And the point is that someone's going to have to explain to me, because I really need I'm going to have to go and hunt my thesaurus out. It's a conversation, not an event. If I have a conversation, if I tell everyone I'm having a conversation, it's going to happen at this place, you can all attend, I think that's an event. I mean, that's actually, it's just
with words.
It's just that. Then this is my point. It is the culture of the SNP that rules are no more than decoration, and that's the problem. It's the idea that you have rules so that people, that plebs from the outside, can ask what are the rules, and you've got something to wave at them, but they don't actually apply to you. It's just something to wave at the outside world to say we're a civilized modern party, and I know we're supposed to have these things, so here they are. But it doesn't mean this is the standards by which we intend to hold the standards up to which we intend to hold ourselves, and it's part of the problem with the SNP. It is a major problem. I was just reminding myself, because somebody sent me the link, about the events round about that NEC meeting at which the half of the audit committee and the treasurer resigned, and warning the NEC. It was on Ian's blog, Ian Lawson's blog on News for Scotland, and they're warning the SNP that there was impropriety going on, and basically the NEC suppressed the whistleblower. Now, this is something I think this is going to come back to haunt quite a few people, because I don't think people understand that the NEC is the legal guardian, the legal governor of the SNP. It is legally liable for fraud and corruption. And if it turns out there has been fraud on the part of the SNP HQ, and particularly Peter Murrell, over this money, I'm sorry, they're
all liable, every one of them.
They're all liable. And so just to get people, I just want to start this now, because I want to start to seed in people's minds what normality looks like. Because once again, within the SNP, there's an expectation that normality doesn't apply. If Murrell is charged, or even if he's arrested and interviewed under caution, or if he's investigated under caution, it would be normal practice to suspend the NEC and to suspend the Finance and Audit Committee, because those are the bodies which were supposed to be, literally, explicitly supposed to be monitoring the organisation. And there's clear evidence that they were given explicit knowledge of misdeeds, or the appearance of misdeeds, or even in this case, in some ways, just the failure to provide information to reassure people that weren't misdeeds. And they not only didn't act on it, they suppressed it. That is a serious issue. But this is what I mean. It's a culture of impunity. And I'll tell you this, and you might not imagine this, but I am awfully rules-minded. I mean, I just am. I know that you might think that, McAlpine's a radical. No, one of the things that I always tell people, if you want to do things which are challenging, if you want to challenge the British state, if you want to challenge poverty, the power of finance, if you want to challenge power, make sure your house is clean. Because it's just, if you've got a dirty house and you take power on, they will not come after your arguments, they will come after your dirty house. And one of you should see the size of documents that Commonweal has on constitution, on complaints procedures, disciplinary procedures, 8-star. We've got a big, we're only a staff of 7, we've got a big staff handbook. And all of that I put in place when it was started, exactly because when you're threatening power, you cannot afford to be talking about failures in your governance, failures in the way that you did your administration. Keep your nose clean, because if it isn't, it's going to be exposed. And this is I think, a terrible mistake the SNP's made.
Well, there's two other ones, Robin, I'd like your opinion on. I mean, the fact is that the day that Nicola Sturgeon became leader is the day that Peter Murrell should have stepped aside. He didn't. But again, it cannot be right the husband of the retiring leader chooses this or oversees the choosing of the successor. It's all very well people saying, "Oh, but MI voice are going to count the votes," but he oversees. And trying to say his wife cannot influence his choice or his health, it's just wrong.
It's not just that it's not just that he's got access to the votes. So again, I know most of you probably know this, but getting someone in to count the out. This is a metaphor because they don't actually have ballot boxes, but getting a third party, authorized third party to count the outcomes of a ballot box doesn't count if you're in control of what goes into the ballot box. And as it currently stands, the SNP HQ is taking phone votes and write-in votes. And they're not being independently verified. They will be handed in to say, here's part of the vote. So it's a classic example of misdirection. So I'll give you another example. Right? SNP HQ's murder for this. I jump up and down and say, "Come on, media, for the love of God, can't you see what they're doing here?" So, for example, when the missing 600,000 first broke, the SNP HQ was jumping up and down about how they'd just been audited and how their accounts were all clean. They were jumping up and down, pointing at their accounts, which weren't actually that clean, but anyway. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, no, of course you're jumping up and down at your accounts. An accountant doesn't care if you've misappropriated funds so long as they're properly accounted for on a balance sheet. The law that you broke was fundraising law. You can, the accountant's not going to sit there and say, I'm going to account for every penny that came in and out to make sure that it's the contract by which you got that money was all clear. That's not what their job is. They've just got to make sure that the administration of the money inside an account is appropriate, and the money was never ring-fenced. So from an accountancy point of view, that's fine. The point is, you cannot fundraise under UK fundraising law. You cannot fundraise and then use that money for anything other than the precise purpose that you fundraised it for. So this is what I mean about misdirection. They're always pointing over there, over here. And now what they're pointing to is, here's a third-party methodology of counting the votes. What they're trying to stop you looking at is, yeah, but who's verifying the legitimacy of the voters? Yeah. And it's let's just say it's very murky. Nobody knows how many party members there are. Nobody knows how you can verify if someone is an up-to-date party member. So there is... that is my. I'm sure you'll ask me later on. I think as things stand, if this is our straight and honest competition, I think Humza's going to lose because of the transfer of second votes. Yeah. But when people ask me, so are you confident Kate Forbes is going to be the next First Minister? I'm saying, and I feel sensitive in saying this because I take the words fraud and corruption very seriously. They have specific means in academic literature, and I do quite a bit of work on transparency, lobbying transparency, government transparency generally. Mm-hmm. And the words like corruption and fraud, they've got very specific meanings, and they can be thrown about a bit too randomly. But let me just put it like this. I do not have sufficient confidence in the propriety of how things are done in the SNP to be confident that there will be no jiggery pokery around the vote. And I don't say that lightly. I genuinely I'm not confident that you can be absolutely certain that this is an untainted election. And that's for me already tainted.
But Robin, it's already tainted.
Well, it is, but let's be equally honest. This is politics. It's a dirty place. Nothing ever comes out of it clean, and there's always this stuff. It's kind of like when people say, "Oh, but the media are against us." Yeah, no, the media is always against us. There's certain baselines that you can complain about it. It's not going to change anything, so you've got to work with it. I mean,
you become the media. Well, that's what a lot of us did. We became the media.
Yeah, exactly so. That's what you've got to do. And I've not got a lot of patience sitting in a step crying my eyeballs out because it didn't go the way that I wanted. It's not constructive. It's not helpful. It doesn't do any good. So did I imagine that these campaigns would be run without, I mean, just straightforward things like there was never really any question that the party's payroll were going to line up one at a time behind whoever was the anointed machine candidate and whatever.
Well, I want to ask
and you can jump up. Aye.
Well, I want to ask you about that.
Yep.
Just before I do that, I was going to say, we're talking about the accounts and the money went missing. I'm sure Al Capone's first set of books were all hunky-dory, but when they were investigated properly, that's why he went to jail.
Well, can I just if anyone's... Aye.
I was just saying, on the payroll, all coming out, as to be expected, the continuity candidate, don't rock the boat, everything will be fine. But here's the thing. Last night, Humza admitted, not for the first time either in this campaign, that he didn't see a route to independence. I mean, if Nicola Sturgeon couldn't get it, he said he didn't, and she was the greatest thing since sliced bread. He couldn't see a way where he would get it, and anything else was just pie in the sky. So how can MPs and MSPs, the payroll, who have been elected to get independence, back the guy who says, well, I can't get it, I don't know how to do it? It's bizarre.
Well, it isn't, because this is right. So I think most viewers will probably know that my professional career is political strategy. I mean, that's what I do. It's not just that I've done it lots of times, mounting campaigns, coming up with strategy and all that stuff. It's like any of you in your trade, you watch it happening elsewhere and you go like, oh, that was clever, or oh my God, what are they doing? So, for example, to this day, I still cringe. In my mind, I still cringe about that time when David Cameron forgot which football team he was supposed to be supporting. I don't know if you remember, he was on national television, and it's West Ham. Yeah, well, no, it was specifically it was he mixed up. I can't remember which one he was supposed to support, but he's supposed to support Aston Villa, and he accidentally said West Ham. And someone pointed out, yeah, they're vaguely the same colour. And I'm sitting there going, if you're going to try and make someone look like a man of the people, make sure you nail it, because if he gets it wrong, it's really, really bad. Meanwhile, I watched the Vote Leave campaign, and I know you all think that it was knuckle-dragging nonsense, but it was no such thing. It was genius. It was a brilliant campaign. The official one, not Farage's nonsense, the official one, the Dominic Cummings one, did everything clinically, carefully, and according to science, and took us out of Brexit. So purely from an external looking at it perspective, I love watching campaigns. It's fascinating. It's my trade. And I'm looking at Humza's campaign and I'm thinking, dear God, did you really think you could get through because what I think they thought was they could get through 2-3 weeks just by saying continuity. And
but isn't it also why they didn't want any media there? They didn't want any television broadcast. They only wanted the people that they invited to locations that they wanted. They didn't want to expose them to the public or to the television because he's not up to the job.
No, but he's not. I mean, I think, again, Humza's a nice guy, but he's not. He hasn't got a clue. I mean, again, I don't love having digs at people. Humza's not a bad human being. But let's be honest. Well, I've got to say I've got a slight bias here because my sister was his office manager for 5 years and always spoke highly of him as a human being. But I mean, let's be honest. I think if Humza's, if I don't mean to be horrible, if Humza has an original thought as First Minister, it will be his first. Up until now, Humza has been, and again, I don't love saying this, but he's been the kind of puppet's puppet. He's been the person who was brought in again and again to almost embody Nicola Sturgeon in places where she couldn't be, rather than actually being somebody who developed his own persona on his own thing. Now what happened was at Humza, I think they seemed to think that they could just play on that everyone will do what Nicola says, and if they've got the nod, all I have to do is not do anything stupid and just keep saying continuity. Then what I think's happened is he's suddenly realised he's in a bit of a fight, and suddenly he's trying to skew himself away from continuity and towards, effectively, I met the blue fairy and now I'm a real boy. And
embarrassing.
And to do that kind of transition in a 2-week campaign or a 3-week campaign is hard to pull off. So what you've got is him actually saying, I'm not as clever as Nicola Sturgeon, and then he's saying, but I'm going to keep going. And I'm sitting there going, did nobody game what more of this looks like? I mean, nothing's going well. And I find it remarkable. You're talking about a government in crisis, and Humza's lead line was, but nothing will change. It was ill thought through. And like I say, it was an outright arrogance. Actually, I'm going to go further. I think it was more than arrogance. I think it was desperation. I think
But
various of their...
Another one, he actually turned around and accused Ash, who had been promoting a separate Scottish currency as quickly as possible, as was voted for by the SNP membership at the conference in 2018. Now, the conference is meant to be the ruling body of the entire party. That's meant to be it. And their decision was ignored. And he called it foolhardy. And that's what him saying to his voters, you're all foolhardy. Because they, in a majority, had voted for it. I mean, does nobody coach that boy?
Well, it's worse than that. Because with that one, he was playing to Liberal commentators. Now, it's worse than that. For me, what really shocked me was the ignorance involved in it. He genuinely didn't have any awareness of all the work that's been done on currency. Now, again, we published the first big paper on currency, and it was by one of the, a global consultant who implements currencies. He's a technology expert who worked on the implementation of the euro, and he works all over the world implementing currencies. And he explained quite clearly how you use the transition period to prepare everything so that you can actually be ready on day one if you want to switch on a currency. Since that, the Scottish Currency Group, the redoubtable Tim Rideout, has put together a very impressive group, professors of economics, people who are very senior bankers. They've taken the work that kind of outline weren't to be done, and they've taken it way forward from that. I mean, there's all sorts of really good detail in here now. Now, it's the fact that these are people in his own party. Humza wasn't aware of this work, and he was dissing it. He was
doesn't know his brain.
Talking it down, and I just think that was daft. Again, I think Humza is trying all the time to work out what liberal journalists want to hear, and just saying that thing. And
but that's the other thing, Robin. If you're an SNP hardcore independence supporter, and you see papers like the Daily Record and the Scotsman and the Herald and the Times all coming out in favour of Humza Yousaf, now I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, why do the unionists want him? Surely alarm bells to anyone who wants independence.
Let me put it the other way, because this is right. So again, one of the things that I would always do as a strategist is that, by the way, if any of you are doing strategy, there's two things that I advise you to take a shot at, which you should always build into your thinking. Number one, pretend you're the other side for a while, right? So fight your own strategy. You put your strategy in place, then spend time imagining you're on the other side. Now strategize for the other side. How do you mess your own strategy up? What do you do to untangle the strategy that you've put in place? And the second thing is, always imagine what failure looks like. This is the biggest mistake that strategists make, is they've all got this idea that they're geniuses, therefore they control the future, so their strategy is definitely going to work, and if they just walk this path, it's brilliant at the end. No plan ever survives first contact with the enemy. Imagine failure. Be prepared for things going wrong, because they will, and don't assume that your strategy takes you all the way through to the end. So taking the first of those, if I was sitting on the other side and I'm asking myself, who do I want to be fighting? There is zero doubt in my mind that you want Humza. You want to be fighting Humza. The reason for this is Kate has some giant Achilles heels, some really major Achilles heels, but she does look bright and competent. You don't want to be taking. I wouldn't suggest that you want to be taking Kate Forbes on a game of intellect, a dispatch box. She's bright, she's articulate, she's capable, she absolutely looks the part, and she knows what she's talking about. You don't want Ash, because let's be absolutely honest, people don't know what Ash would become. So she could be, I'm a friend of Ash's, but when you're a strategist on the other side, Ash can become an absolute liability. She could be dreadful for the SNP and screw things up for them by going down a kind of Lizzie Truss direction. But she might not. She could do the flip. Everyone said, we can't elect Boris Johnson, he's mad. And I just remember, he absolutely nailed that election and wiped out Labour in 2019. because he was a candidate they weren't expecting. Now, in Ash's case, I would be sitting there going, wait a minute here, she's actually got some sort of a coherent plan for independence. She actually implements that. This could be real trouble for us. It really could put us under pressure. And so if you're looking, you don't want the candidate who looks most competent, and you don't look like the candidate who might have the biggest guns somewhere in their bag. You definitely want the candidate who's been fronting up a disaster in the NHS for the last 2 years. You want Humza is the candidate you want to fight. You saw last night. I mean, people said that Kate was really tough.
The Forrest Gump of the SNP.
Yeah, and again, I kind of, I find it quite difficult because I do find it quite hard to see Humza on a personal basis as being the baddie, but he's taken on the mantle of machine baddie, and what make me laugh. One of the things that always makes me laugh is when folks see a debate like that and they say, "Oh, wait a minute, Kate Forbes was a bit pointed. They bullied Humza a bit there. I think I might vote for Humza now because of that." And you're sitting there going, well, hold on a minute here. She didn't even try very hard, and she made him look like a muppet. That line last night, it was the strongest line of the whole night. That line about, I'm sure there would be a cabinet place for Humza, just maybe not health. That was an absolutely, from my perspective, that's an absolutely devastating line. You might get a cabinet position, but definitely not based on your track record. That basically sums up the whole of the Humza candidacy in one place. But and there's another. If anyone's want to be geeky and technical about this, there's another reason why Humza is the candidate that I would want to fight against. It's because he's actually said he's going to keep all the same personnel in place. He's going to keep the same squads. He's going to keep the same policies. He's going to keep the same advisors. And that is the classic example of doing the same thing again. Right? Doing the same thing again and expecting a different result. In fact, the one bit in the campaign so far where I really started to tip over from trying to take a balanced assessment into utter contempt was when he said, on day one, I will instruct SNPHQ to restart an independence campaign. And there's virtually every part of that sentence when I'm going, yeah, what now? Restart? Did I miss the last one? That Peter Murrell, he's been tasked with starting in these campaigns about 3 times. The SNP, you can barely operate a government. You're going to run a campaign at the same time. Your party's falling apart, and you're going to run it from out there. You aren't. It's like Humza. You thought I better say something about independence. What's literally the least thing that I could humanly say, which is bat over some half-arsed attempt to make it look like, send the members out to stick pointless leaflets through a door, and then we'll worry about what comes next. So yeah, I mean, it's not. This is just straightforward. You asked yourselves.
You thought that that comment by Kate was the comment of the last night. I disagree. I think that from the point of view of independent supporters, I think Ash's comment, where she told everyone. She backed up her unity credentials by saying, I've been in touch with all the leaders of all the independence parties, Colin Fox, SSP, Alex Salmond, Colette Walker, there we go. Also, I know I've been in touch with Hope Over Fear, has been in touch with all under one banner to unite, to get the band back together again, Robin. I thought that was the most telling for the independence supporting voters of the SNP.
I think it's the most important. I think that's that and Ash's broad plan for how she's going independent is the most important content from last night.
Constitutional Convention.
Yep.
Would you sit on a Constitutional Convention if you were invited?
Like everybody knows, I'll do bloody anything for Scottish independence. I've driven all over the country to sit in a room with 15 people at times to talk to a small group about how I can help. And of course I will. A person can come back on this. A personal view, I think it's a bit early for a convention yet. I think there's still a fair bit of work that needs to be done. I think what we need is a campaign. But that's a whole other thing. Yeah, of course. I mean, I'll work with anybody. I really will. I'm not sectarian about these things. I'll fight my corner, but you don't get anywhere without working in coalitions. Everything in all social change comes from coalitions. You've got to work in coalitions. You've got to work with people. But no, what I meant by that is that from Ashes to it was the main content that I think was important in terms of how things are going to go. What I mean by is in terms of selecting who looks like a leader, that was the strongest line of the night, in the sense that she could very calmly and understatedly give the impression that she knows that Hamza's not been doing a good job. That both makes her look like she understands, but also make him look like he's not strong, that he's somewhat of a liability. So I thought it was also remember she improvised that line, which is, for me, I love to see somebody improvise a good line. So I think that was the strongest line. I mean, I presume we'll go on and talk about what would actually happen with different candidates getting elected. And I think Kate's got some big problems, but in terms of straightforward intellect, I mean,
she's talking about she wants to go for Section 30s and another mandate. Did you not listen to the Supreme Court? Do you think that never again will a Prime Minister based in England agree to a Section 30? I mean, you're an intelligent woman. Why would you think that they'll change their mind?
Now, there's tiers of this here, which is, I think that Kate's position is there's no three of those positions that I think take us all the way to independence on their own. I think that Ash is well out ahead, but I do think that in terms of having a structure, but I mean, I'll be absolutely honest with you, I don't think that 50%, 51%, 52% at a general election or a Scottish election actually will bring them straight to the ballot box. I think you're going to have to follow up with more than just that. I think that you get I know I'm trying to avoid the word moral mandate, but you get the actual specific democratic mandate to do specifically this thing. And then when they say, no, I think you're going to have to do some more things. But Ash is the closest to being there. I think that Kate's second closest, in the sense that she's at least got a sense about how, when she talks about having to build up support, she at least has a vision about how she thinks she can build up support. She's got a soft no voter, soft wavering voter focus, which she thinks she can do what Nicola didn't and bring them over through competent government and having a good indie plan and all that kind of stuff. Well, I mean, it's a step forward from where we are, but I think that she's going to struggle to explain to people how that's a strategy with a time scale as opposed to an aspiration. And then, of course, you got Hamza, and I genuinely can't work out. So I understand. I don't think it's particularly credible, but I understand what Kate is saying. But I am at a loss as to what Hamza thinks his pitch is. I mean, he's saying we need to bring people over with us. And I mean, really straightforwardly, I'm not a Nicola Sturgeon fan, but she's a great communicator. And if she can't do it...
Ditto, I agree. That was her only, in my opinion.
It was her primary skill set. She was, I mean, I keep saying this, Sturgeon was primarily good at telling Liberal commentators exactly what they wanted to hear.
What they wanted to hear. Yep.
I mean, that was her basic skill set. I always said she's a little bit like an AI machine from Liberal Twitter. She could quickly absorb the most popular. She could quickly absorb the most popular positions and articulate them fluently, almost in the same words backwards, and then people would go, "That's very wise." But nevertheless, she was a great communicator.
Well, I was a bit more crude. I said she was a politician who just loved bandwagons. Whatever bandwagon come along, be it Me Too, People's Vote for Brexit, she jumped on those. She jumped on them.
Yeah.
She has no.
But that's kind of what I mean.
No core, and nor has Humza. Humza's got no core to his politics.
Well, that's what I mean about That's what I mean about now having to persuade us that he can be can be a real boy. It's that transition from Pinocchio to being an actual autonomous independent candidate. And I'm going to. I know things I don't want to share with you, but
if not, I'll say it.
Well, let's put it like this. I have got a little sympathy for Hamza here because at stages on this specific subject, at stages during his political development, he explicitly would have liked to have a little bit more space and time to grow on his own and he kept getting dropped into shit shows by Nicola Sturgeon because she needed somebody pliant and plausible. And for that reason, Humza spent much of his life being booted around from crisis to crisis for the plausible face of a crisis. And that's not a brilliant way to develop your own political skills. It makes him adequate at trying to defend failure, but that's kind of it. So in that sense, I do have some sympathy that he was a machine politician almost instantly. I don't think Humza's had a job. Like other than he was a researcher for an MSP and MHD, so he's never had a job. He's never lived in the outside world. He's never really. But then at the same time, he was promoted extremely quickly internally, and he's never really had an opportunity to find out what the hell his politics are, other than just mirroring the party line. And that's I think that's what we're kind of seeing now. And that's what I was meaning earlier on by. Humza has peaked as everything that Humza is likely to be, because he certainly won't get space to discover what he thinks, what he feels, what he means as a first minister. He'll be under the cosh from day one. So,
but do you not think that Nicola Sturgeon used him as her Bashar Hamid? I mean, she thought, well, Alec did that and it was good with Bashar Hamid. So, as you say, he was parachuted into jobs. When he took the transport job, he admitted he didn't know his brief. He's with no disrespect to him, no harm to him. It's not his fault, but he's failed in every brief he's had.
Yeah, and I can. Again, this is what I'm trying to be doing. He didn't want any of those briefs. Those are. I think it's reasonably widely known. I think it's reasonably well known that Humza was basically, I'll do anything but not health, and he got health and spelled his way through it. But I mean, it's kind of like, well, there you go. That's that. If you're gonna keep accepting the role as fall guy, accept that you're going to spend a lot of your career falling, and that's basically what's happened to Humza. He's accepted the role as a fall guy, and he's done an awful lot of falling. And coming back from that's quite tricky. One of the things I was quite interested in, and I know this might be a bit geek for folk, but I was really interested, because I do this, is in some of the body language approaches that were taken last night. And in particular, Humza's, and how they clearly prepped him to do this. So if you look at how Humza came out and how Humza opened and how he stood it, his stance, his posture, the way he was gesturing to the other two candidates, it was all saying, now, can we just get this over with? Because I'm obviously the guy, and we need to get back onto the serious stuff and that sort of me stuff. So he came out at the gig last night with a full dominant pose, and the way he was bringing others in was he was seeking to take the role, which is they train you this in day one of debate school. Look like you are look like you're the one who's directing things. It gives you the sense of authority. And what I was watching, because I saw it early on, I saw, right, okay, that's what you're doing. You're playing dominant here. If you want to see what that looks like, there's a brilliant piece of footage of him. But it's Yasser Arafat, and I can't remember
talking of that, I've used it twice already, and talking of body language. Techie, John, can you stick up that video of Nicola, as I'll not say what our Yvonne said at the weekend, but where she puts Humza very much in his place. Finger up, be quiet. Look at the head down, head
You see,
down.
that was interesting. The telling point there isn't Sturgeon's gesture, it's his.
It's his, but
you watch it, the key thing is,
you see it. I did body language is my thing. I did so many of them. I loved it.
Yeah.
And that was him being submissive. That was him like
absolutely submissive. It was the equivalent of.
You think he's going to lead you to independence, folks? Ain't going to happen.
Yeah, no, that's partly the problem. And so the example that I was going to give you was it was during the Oslo Accord negotiations, and I'm really embarrassed. I can't remember who Israeli leader was, but it was Yasser Arafat. And there's this shot of them both going in a room, and everybody will tell you, if you want to look dominant, go in second into a room. It's like day one in dumbass how to look like a leader school, which is put your hand in the base of the other one and shepherd them through. You're in control, they're in first. If there's a lion in there, they get ate. It's just a psychological trick. And what you saw in this video is the pair of them, I mean, virtually wrestling each other to the ground to see who could get the hand on the other one's back and go through second. Now, that's when it all backfires, right? That's when dominant body language, dominant positioning starts to have a serious mismatch with the sounds, the noise, the content. And that was what happened to Hamza last night. He came out absolutely dominant. I'm the guy. Let's get this over with so I can get on with saving Scotland. And the second Kate Forbes went for him, he started to look... Well, he started to look quite... he didn't collapse because he's accomplished it. He's accomplished it standing his body language, but he started to look like... it was quite Wizard of Oz. His stance wasn't matched by his intellectual or his strategic or his messaging dominance during the event. So it was only a side point. I was really trying to get across this idea that Hamza is playing a role he's not natural in. Hamza is not an alpha. He's not a political alpha. He's not
certain people who, when they walk onto a room or onto a stage, control the room, control the audience.
I'm obsessed with this movie. I'm obsessed with this movie because see people that are really good at that. It is scary. So do you know how folk will tell you that they met Hollywood stars, and it turns out that they're actually better looking in real life than they are in there's something magnetic about them when you see them.
That's what people say to me, Robin.
I know it happens to me all the time, but that's only because my photographs are
That's
bad.
the exact opposite. I was at a conference last year. One of the people come up and said, "Oh, I love your Prism show, Roddy, but I tell you what, you look better on the screen than you do in real life."
There you go. That's it. You have to get them in ageism. But no, I'm really taken with this because it is a whole thing. The idea of presence, right? Presence is this massively weird intangible, right? People who you think have it don't. People who should have it don't.
Right now, people who want to act right.
Oh, there you go. People who have it. There's people who don't have it, who should, and there's people who've got it for no reason. So I'm going to give you some examples. For example, you know the whole story about Marilyn Monroe could walk down the street and nobody would see her because she wasn't switched on as Marilyn. She was being interviewed. I think it was Time magazine was interviewing, and they walked down the street and they couldn't believe it. They were going to the supermarket. And nobody was seeing her. And he was taken aback by this. And he said, "But why are you?" She goes, "Oh, do you want me to be Marilyn?" And she switched Marilyn on the spot. Her demeanor, her moves, her stand, the whole thing. And instantly, everyone in the shop went, "What's Marilyn Monroe?" Now, that's what I mean by presence. You want to look at the people who are amazing at this. I mean, again, this has got nothing to do with their politics. Obama certainly had it.
Obama, without a doubt, yeah. I don't like his politics, but he had it.
No, he was absolutely the one that was actually the king of this. The real master of presence was Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton charmed every room.
Ronald Reagan as well, I've got to say.
Oh, Reagan had it. Definitely Reagan had it as well. Weirdly, in a kind of a way, for sure. Weirdly, in a kind of a way, George W. sort of bluffed it because he wasn't that sort of alpha. He wasn't that sort of alpha dog in that sense, but he had mastered this ability of being the solid guy that you wanted to go for a beer with, and he had that persona, that presence, which gave him a position. Now, what I can tell you is none of the three candidates currently standing there currently have it. It's not none of them. For all Kate's intellectual capabilities, you can't imagine Kate walking into a room of 100 people and the music, the needle scratches and everybody turns around aware of her presence. And again, another one that I find that I was interested with this. Someone had once been asked, I think it was Peter Ustinov, who was the greatest presence that he'd ever seen. Who commanded every room that he went into. It was quite interesting because he said Omar Sharif. Now, I wouldn't necessarily have picked him immediately, but he said that when Omar Sharif walked into a room, people with their back to them could sense he was there. Things stopped for him when he walked in the room. Now, none of them have got that. Incidentally, actually, Sturgeon didn't have it either. She could switch it on. She wasn't a natural. Sturgeon could walk into a room and nobody would notice. She was much more like the Marilyn Monroe. She had to switch it on. Bill Clinton didn't. Bill Clinton just did it instinctively. Sturgeon could switch it on. None of the other three have. They don't have it at the moment. Now, power brings you presence. That's one of the things. Sturgeon didn't. I laugh at this. Sturgeon didn't look anything like a dominant figure until she was in power.
Well, because she was behind a big alpha male.
Yeah, but it wasn't just that. I mean, I laugh because there was a profile of Sturgeon that was done just as she was ascending to the throne, I think it was, and they talked to a number of people. Now, this was a senior, sympathetic insider who was in the room during the salmon years, not the salmon, and they were asked what did they make of precisely of Nicola Sturgeon's presence, and what they said was, when she walks in the room, the temperature drops by 3 degrees. She wasn't by any means that kind of a person, but she found a way to do it and to channel it. So what I'm saying is, I don't think any of the three of them, in fact, I'll tell you for a fact, none of the three of them have got it. Could they develop it? Yeah. Anyone can, not anyone, but most people can develop a presence if they get the confidence and the position and power. Do I think Hamza can do it? I don't really think so. Like I say, he's already had the power, the positioning, all of that stuff. He's already had that, and I don't think he's got a long way to go. Can Kate do it? Definitely. I'm not convinced that Kate's the world's greatest charisma, but she will have a poise and a presence which will grow with time. And I mean, one more time, I'm friends with Ash. We worked together, and I've helped out a little bit in her campaign. I've also stayed in touch with the Forbes campaign, and I think that Ash is being greatly underrated. But don't get on, Kate. I mean, I was amazed to find that Ash hadn't done any media training in her life before this campaign. All the media training she's ever done, I did in 1 2-hour session because I thought, oh my God, I better offer to do this.
It all the more applaudable what she's managed to do in this last.
Well, that's the point. And one of the things that I kind of someone said to me, but in the early debate she looked petrified. I'm saying, in the early debate she was petrified. She was with 2 weeks notice, no prep, no prep. She had to stand up.
No big team round about her either.
No background, no nothing. And bear in mind, there's another thing that this was really quite cynical, which is in those early debates, once again, in their infeasibly small venues, with their inexplicable ticket allocations, Ash was standing in places that they were actively failing to clap anything she said. And then you try it. I've done it. I did a debate in Lark Hall on independence once. I wouldn't say that the rafters were being shaken by the thunderous applause that I was getting for comments that were putting into it. It was nothing to do with my performance. It was just it was a hostile audience. I did the same thing in the Borders once. And it doesn't matter how good you are, if you're projecting into a strange silence, it's unnerving. It does it.
Yeah, but that's why it was a hand-picked audience.
Yeah, well, that was part of the job.
I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about, the conversation. I've offered, after what happened in Clydesdale, I've offered Ash and Kate a platform on here for a conversation. I've not heard back from them, but that invitation still lies open.
I will perhaps nudge people close to either from to see if they can prioritise this. But bear in mind, they'll struggle to find time. They're basic. But see, remember, the nuttiness of this, it is to all intents and purposes over on Sunday. Sundays it's closed. The whole thing's over. The voting opens on Monday. And in the SNP, if it's anything like previous elections, if it's anything like the same pattern, about 50 to 60% of SNP vote comes in the first 24, 48 hours. The vast majority of this will be over on Sunday. And this is what I mean. There's no, because I was sitting with, I was talking to someone in the Ash team, and I was just saying, well, what's the schedule now? I've lost track of debates and all these things. And I was saying, because I mean, it was good for Ash last night. It was a strong, given where she was starting, that was a strong performance. It was a strong outcome from her. It made people look a little bit again. And I was saying the BBC could be important, and they said, well, maybe, but it's 3 days after the voting opens. I went, oh, for goodness sake, you could just not turn up just about by that. It wouldn't make much difference. So finding time for anybody to actually do anything before this is over could be a little bit tricky. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, I think I do this for a living, and I'm trying to work out what you could do differently in a 4-week period to have a very different outcome. Now, in Ash's case, straightforwardly, they felt, or I think it was actually Ash, felt they had to hit the ground running, and half of what has been giving her difficulty is all to do with things that were done in the first 4 or 5 days before there was a breath to sit down and, look at things, put things together. And that's the first thing that I would have said to all of them, which is, well, if it wasn't such a crazy campaign, don't do anything for the first 2 weeks. I mean, literally just shut up, It's not a sprint. Well, it is now, but it shouldn't have been a sprint. You've got to get your positions right. You've got to drill it. You've got to know what you're talking about. Don't go on a TV until you've got the answers to the questions. At least not memorized, but at least you've got to know roughly what your positioning on them all is. And I'm telling you this, people in Scotland who can answer knowledgeably and effectively on every single policy issue right across government. I don't know if there is one. And I should say that actually I kind of can, mostly, but that's primarily because I do this for a full time. I work for a think tank 5 days a week. This is all we do. We just monitor policy and talk about it. But there's no many other people that do that. And even I would struggle.
Suggest that Mr. Salmond could.
Well, he was one more time again. Sure, if you've been the First Minister, if you're in government, or also if you're a very accomplished politician, you can answer any question without while appearing to give.
We're running out of time, Robin. But just before you go, the one thing I've noticed, talking about all the payroll and whatnot, there's a huge disconnect. It seems to me. Now I cannot do anecdotal. I don't have anything in the game as such. I want to see my country independent, but social media is telling me the races and the Whom's is nowhere at the races. Only with the payroll should be a big alarm bell for anyone within the SNP with half a brain.
Look, let me phrase it as a wider. Let me answer that as a wider question, because what I would warn everyone, this is dawning slowly in quite a lot of places just now, inside the SNP. This is an existential crisis moment for the SNP, and I don't see that lightly. So I have been absolutely I've for those that have spoken to private with people, friends, and various other stuff, they'll tell you that I had been more or less predicting this entire pattern of events from 2017. There was never a fraction of a second when I believed that Sturgeon would deliver independence. I had very specific reasons for that. I was watching carefully the dismantling of the conference, but more to the point, I was watching other things like the failure to bring in new talent, the suppression of the talent which was there, the quality of what was being assembled around them, the succession capabilities. But above all, I'm a geek. I was watching really closely with government, and government started to devolve into error almost immediately. Certainly 2016, there were early signs of it. By 2017, the education agenda was in crisis. I was watching all of these things, and I'm saying, do people understand where this is going? They are going to crash at the end. Sturgeon are going to leave under a cloud. The SNP is going to have major internal problems, massive divisions, splits. It's got financial problems because it's losing members all over the place, and it's never had much money, surprisingly little money in the Sturgeon. Basically, since the Weirs stopped acting as sugar daddies, the SNP's had financial problems all the way through. It's been investigated by the police. It's got nothing much at the moment to say about government. It's got another 4 years of this to go. There's such a full-scale reason to believe that there's major problems inside the SNP. And one of the things, I've not done this yet, but I want to do right a little bit, is just before the thing, is just to say, do everybody take a second to stop and think what the different candidates mean in the context of a crisis. And the SNP is in a crisis. Don't kid on, it's not. You have a situation here where, with the best will in the world, I'm not sure how any of the candidates in an 18-month period can turn around the likelihood that they're going to be noticeable, going on significant, potentially substantial losses of seats in whenever the UK general election is called. There's going to be low motivation. There's going to be a big focus on Tories versus Labour. You're going to still be doing this in the backdrop of just about everything going wrong in government, even if someone starts to get a grip when they come in. And with both, and this is another crisis that I think people need to worry about. The payroll has gone virtually feral in the SNP. They genuinely believe it's their party. They genuinely think it's outrageous if anyone challenges the payroll. And what I think that you are looking at, I've heard people genuinely speculating that it might turn all Corbyn, that the payroll will just make it impossible for either Ash or for Kate to govern. I mean, seriously, they've already floated the possibility they might not even vote for Kate as First Minister if she wins. That's Looney Tunes. That's expulsion from the party. Looney Tunes. That's the kind of strength of hostility there is to challenging that machine. Now, a person coming in has got to fight the independent stuff. They've got to somehow get a bloody ferry sailing, and it's almost certainly not going to be the one that's sitting in Ferguson's at the moment, my best guess. They're going to have to do something to get the NHS in some kind of order. They're going to have to restart a National Care Service somehow. Let's not even go into GRR for a second. They've got the deposit return scheme, which is looking like one of the biggest debacles I've ever seen in my life in public policy. So you've got all that stuff going on. They've got a party which is dysfunctional and it's a mess, whose chief executive has been investigated by the police for fraud, which, like I say, could bring down an entire house of cards round about it, because there's many other people who are liable on this. To do all of that and have to fight a rearguard action against malcontents in the parliament, trying to make it impossible for you to govern, is a tough ask. Now, all of that happening. So here's what I think happens with the candidates. So if Humza comes in, literally nothing will change. The same personnel will do the same things. The same mistakes will keep happening and probably accelerate. He won't be able to bluff his way out of it with the poise that Sturgeon did. They'll hit next year there'll be a general election. They'll hit a general election next year, and I think there'll be a rout. I think it'll be, if you're lucky, it'll be 2017, and you'll be down to 35 MPs. Then there's going to be a lot of unhappy people, really pissed off people. The one thing to never ever do in politics, if you want to keep your job, is lose other people their jobs. If you've got a whole bunch of MPs, former MPs, kicking about, having just lost their jobs, and that's what that is what really kicked off all Sturgeon's problems. All Sturgeon's most recent problems were kicked off because she had a terrible 2017 election, scrapped the referendum that she'd been promising, got totally paranoid about Alex Salmond. So, I mean, this is all happening in a few weeks. So she loses an election. She calls off the referendum. She hits an all-time low. Her lowest ever approval ratings occur in October 2017. She has a sudden scandal and vacancy. One of the people whose jobs she's just lost is Alex Salmond. He looks like he's going to come back up to the Scottish Parliament. Before the end of October, she's began the process of a new complaints procedure, shall we say, right? And that was what led to that should have finished her off in 2-3 years. COVID bought another 2 years. Now that is an accelerated version of what I think would happen certainly to Humza if he keeps a continuity run and loses people's jobs in the general election next year. So I think Humza causes a rout, a complete collapse in confidence, and I think he'll be challenged within 2 years. If it's Kate,
if he lasts that long.
And that's I mean, I really do think it's going to be kind of that far in. If it's Kate,
I mean, we have to hope maybe like the 1918 general election for the United Kingdom, where the Irish Parliamentary Party got wiped out by Sinn Féin. Maybe that could happen. Anyway, Robin.
Well, see,
the clock is beating us, mate. The clock is beating us.
Oh, sorry. Let me just finish that off by saying this is the last part of their crisis, which is that usually when a political party is in this position, there is a mechanism, and that mechanism is go out of power for a while. And the SNP doesn't have that option. The SNP can't be saved by its payroll. It needs to be saved by its members. There is no way out of this. That is my final point. I would urge the members of the SNP to understand the scale of this crisis and recognise that casting a vote And this election isn't the job done. It's the job only started. And you cannot go back to your constituencies and wait for the grown-ups to fix it, because there ain't any grown-ups fixing this. This is going to have to be an all-party effort to stop averting what is otherwise a locked-in train wreck. I
agree. Robin, as usual, fabulous. We could probably go on for another couple of hours. Thanks
you know me.
For being here. And to you,
it's lovely to be here.
I hope you've enjoyed this. I've got a few more surprises coming up for you over the next week or two. Don't want to say anything yet, but I can say that we'll have some special guests for you this weekend. Until then, you all take care now.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.